Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and you have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Thursday, May 20th, 2021. I'm David Menzies, and as always on every Tuesday and Thursday, I am joined by, well, let's just call her, she is the straw that stirs the drink. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta, and that would be Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing, Sheila?
David, that's excellent. Thank you very much. I think I finally, well, I haven't figured out my technical difficulties in studio here, but I figured out moments before I came on air how to use my cell phone as a webcam, put it into my computer, and chroma key the background. I'm shocked at myself. I don't even know what's happening right now, but if things like start on fire halfway through the broadcast, I'm just winging it here. But I think it looks okay. Justin said it looks okay. So better than the last couple of days anyway.
And that is exactly why I call you the straw that stirs the drink. You are such a multi-talented wonder. You can multitask with the best of them. And man, if it was up to me, it would be a disaster. Technology and I, we don't get along. So I need special help from our wonderful trained broadcast professionals here at Rebel News headquarters. But this is around about the time you explain the ostensible policy reason, what it is we're doing. But before you do that, Sheila, I'm looking at your shirt. There's a whole lot of things going on there. It looks like some kind of humanoid, and there's a heart and a spear and three little what in devil's name am I looking at there?
It's a Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt. Okay. I don't know. I just thought it looked cool.
What does it all mean?
I don't know. It was coffee. They're conservative. I like T-shirts. It's kind of a cool image, so that's why I got it. There's no like secret, hidden, cryptic meaning behind it. I just kind of like it.
I bet there is, and I'm going to find out what it is. Maybe you won't be wearing it any longer, or maybe you'll wear it with pride. Who knows? But, this drives me crazy. I'll see somebody on the street, and they'll be wearing, like, say, a Pittsburgh Steelers baseball cap. And I'll say, oh, you're a big Steelers fan. They go, no. Oh, what are you wearing that for? I mean, yeah, it's like, used to be you wore your team colors on your sleeves, and now I guess it's just if the logo looks cool. Is that the kind of world we're living in, Sheila?
Yeah, I mean, but we've seen this for years. We see people like decked out top to bottom in athleisure or like, wearing the best sneakers, and they've never run a day in their life. I mean, everything is fashion, right?
But I know you do a lot of running.
I do a lot of running. I try to do exercises that help me in the real world. So running, I think, is beneficial because you never know when you have to run from a bear, rapist, male feminist, whatever, right? Like, you don't know. Yikes. You don't know.
Holy mackerel.
Should we tell everybody what we're doing here?
Yes, please.
Okay. Justin, you didn't give me the rundown before we went on air about the platforms that we're broadcasting on. So I'm just going to wing it and you'll correct me as I go. All of them?
All of them. Yep.
Okay. So people are probably watching us right now on YouTube. That's normally where we live stream. But YouTube doesn't like us and we don't like them. Although we have nearly 1.5 million YouTube subscribers, YouTube has completely demonetized us here. So they've taken away our ability to make any sort of revenue here. If you see an ad in front of our content, YouTube is taking 100% of that. But this is where we initially live streamed. It's where people find us. So that's why we're staying here. People are finding us here. We'll stay here as long as we can, probably a little bit for spite too, because we know YouTube doesn't want us here. But if you are watching us on YouTube, might I suggest that you check us out on some of the other streaming platforms that we're on, like Rumble, and like Odyssey and like Super U. And Super U, they're brand new, they're pretty free speechy, they have a live chat function there. So you can talk back and forth in the same manner that you can talk back and forth with each other on YouTube, which I think was probably the funnest part of YouTube. Is I would notice people, the little community growing and people becoming friends there. And over on Odyssey, you can still support the work that we do here at Rebel News. So on Odyssey, they have their own cryptocurrency, which I don't understand. And it's called a library. And you can throw us a library. And that, I think, counts for real world money. What was it, Justin? 20 cents is a library? Give or take, depending on the day and whatever Elon Musk tweeted. You can send us a library, and it's like a YouTube super chat, and Justin will send it to us, and we'll read it on air.
I love that. Throw as a library, as opposed to my high school years when I was continually being thrown out of the library.
Yeah.
So, I don't understand. And you know what, Sheila? I regret to say, the more I read and research cryptocurrencies, the less I understand. I really don't get it. Is this really a thing? And if anyone can weigh in on one of the chats and explain, but I just, I don't know. I don't understand it.
I really should devote some time to understanding it, because I like the fact that it's not tethered to a government. You know how I feel about government. I don't like it. I like that it's, there's a whole freedom aspect to cryptocurrency. I just don't understand it. Like, I know where gold comes from. I can go, if I want to physically go to the gold mine and look at the gold coming out of the ground, and I can see it. I just don't know how a cryptocurrency becomes a currency worth something. I don't understand that part. But I'll try. I'll work on it.
Well, we're long off the gold standard, but I hear what you're saying, Sheila. You can hold on to gold. Gold is tangible, And to quote the great Razor Ramon, "Hey, Chico, something happened to the gold. Something going to happen to you, Chico." Anyways, but this cryptocurrency, it's in a cloud somewhere or something. I don't know. But enough about that. Enough about our ignorance of other forms of currency, folks. Lots to get at, Sheila. And one is, I so hate the listing. Just to read it breaks my heart. Mocha assaulted in Montreal. Yeah, Montreal in 2021 last weekend kind of looked like the Middle East. Just pick a weekend any year. People throwing rocks, people throwing bottles, the cops responding with canisters of tear gas. It was a surreal sight. You'll see in the video, folks. There's two warring factions, the pro-Israel people, the pro-Hamas people, and Montrealers just going about their business shopping and ending up, coughing and hacking or worse because of ingesting tear gas that the Montreal police are constantly lobbing in. Mocha did indeed get assaulted for reasons that remain mysterious and from a source that seems inexplicable. But before we get into it, why don't we roll the footage of what was happening last weekend in Montreal?
Whoa, 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 whoa! It's wrong, wrong! It's wrong, wrong! It's wrong, wrong! Fuck you!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chief Videographer at Rebel News. My name is Mocha. I was in Montreal this last weekend where crazy things happened. There were two major protests. One was a pro-Palestine protest and the other one was pro-Israel protest. The pro-Palestinian protest took place on Saturday, same square where the very next day a pro-Israeli protest took place. And this time pro-Palestinian counter-protesters showed up and things got a little ugly. The streets were filled with tear gas and pepper spray. I got punched in the face. Pedestrians who had nothing to do with the protest got affected. A couple people got arrested. Traffic was halted. Take a look at this crazy footage.
So what just happened? Who sprayed gas? The police?
Tried to pull it out, and when they were trying to keep them separate, we were trying to not to have them collapse. And then one of them pulled a spray and started spraying everybody's faces. And then the police took them and got him.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais? Toi tu mets ça dans mes poches. T'es fou quoi pas? Hey, on circule je suis à toi, let's go. Là-bas, let's go, on circule. Let's go.
It's just press.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for interrupting. Would you please mind going to rebelnews.com and give us your email address so that we can stay in touch? As you know, YouTube has already gave us 2 strikes, and if we get another one, we're gonna be off YouTube basically. So please consider giving us your email so we can stay in touch. Thank you.
They kill you guys! Shame on you! They kill you! The terrorists killing you! No violence! Back up! Where's the second one? There were 2. Come on, they're looking for that.
You see?
I thought you were... Where's the second one? There were 2 of them. Where's the second one? Guys, go home. Guys, go home. Come on, go home. There were 2 of them. Where's the second one?
Palestine.
Officer here.
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm recording. You punched me.
Well, I can't really see it.
Don't lie, brother. Look.
He was protecting himself. I saw him.
I'm not rebellious. He's not
I'll
protecting.
tell you something. They came with a knife. They're there with knives.
Look,
They came
here.
with knives.
You know what the difference with
sir.
Jews and Arabs? Arabs, they have knives. They're dirty.
We're not here to fight, bro.
That's him right here running. And then he comes up to me and then punches me.
Where is he? That's not him. That's not even him.
Bro, don't lie. He punched me in the face.
Yo, Rebel News. Go do your stuff.
They keep changing which one. Oh, the wrong one. Whoa.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, eh, Sheila? I mean, don't you pine for the good old days when Montrealers would riot, like back in 1955 when their star player Rocket Richard was suspended? Now, those were riots I could get my head around and understand. But it's kind of like a scene imported from the Middle East right into Quebec's largest city. And it seems that, as far as I could tell, it looked like a bizarre and somewhat violent version of Capture the Flag. The Israeli supporters would run and try to grab the Palestinian flags and vice versa. A whole lot of sound and fury signifying nothing, as the Shakespearean quote goes. But I don't understand the vicious assault that was a complete and utter sucker punch on Mocha. And then what makes things worse, and thank goodness we live in a day and age of cameras, because the camera does not lie. Yeah. That business, you saw the spin, didn't you, Sheila? Well, they're using, and I assume they were including Mocha as part of a knife. Well, here's a cell phone, folks. I know it fits in a hand. Doesn't really look like a knife to me. And then they said he was doing it in self-defense. And it didn't look like the police were that interested anyways, because when you have violent protesters in Montreal and the Montreal police in Montreal, it reminds me of, Sheila, the tagline for Aliens versus Predator: no matter who wins, we lose, right? But what do you make of that chicanery that we saw unfold last weekend?
What's really irked me is, even though this is on camera and we've got a couple different angles here, the conspiracy theories about Mocha. I've been a victim of these conspiracy theories myself, from the feminists who said that I asked for it when I was punched at the Women's March for simply asking questions. They're saying Mocha started it. Mocha is standing apart from everybody else, up against the railing of that little bridge or like pedestrian overpass or whatever it is. He's not standing near anybody else. Then the liars say that Mocha had a knife. Where? He's got his hands on his camera. How is he brandishing a knife while recording somebody punching him in the face? And it's an uppercut. Then I saw somebody online say Mocha was waving a Palestinian flag. I saw somebody say that and absolutely insist that Mocha was waving a Palestinian flag. Look, he's not. We sent him there to work. Yeah. But secondarily, and I say this as someone who is staunchly pro-Israel, if you're waving a Palestinian flag, that's not worthy of getting punched in the face. Where do they comport? Even if he were, and he wasn't, but if anybody was, that doesn't necessitate them being punched in the face like that. And my problem with all of this is, besides the cops doing absolutely nothing, even though he's punched in the face on camera, and then the lies and lies and lies after the fact. I think my problem is the lies. Yeah. Because I appreciate the cause. I'm pro-Israel myself. But if you're in the pro-Israel movement and you saw this happen, you can't be lying for these people. No. You have to purge the violent wackadoos from your movement, because they serve to discredit it and alienate people. And if you're one of those people who actively lied for this person and tried to hide him from, getting a little bit of justice and preventing Mocha from getting the justice he's rightly deserved, shame on you. Yeah. Just shame on you. You and I cover conservative protests all the time, and there's always a fringe wackadoo there. But by and large, the majority of people don't give them any credence. They just go about their business. And surely if they acted up, did something, assaulted someone, it's my hope that they would do the right thing. I didn't see the right thing happening there. And I think that's the part that really, really bothers me here. And those cops, instead of treating those Israeli supporters as though, like just, why don't you just pretend like they're Orthodox Jews trying to go to synagogue and arrest them?
Oh, good
instead
point.
of just listening to the lies.
Yeah. Sheila, I echo everything you just said. That person who threw the sucker punch and his friends disgraced themselves. And, they
don't do their movement any favors at all.
100%. And this could have been at least tempered down a few degrees if the guy said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. In the heat of the moment, I threw a punch at clearly someone who wasn't part of the opposite camp," as though you should be throwing punches anyways. We shouldn't be having violent protests. We should be arguing with ideas and thoughts and concepts, not, knuckle sandwiches. But the fact that they not only lied about it, but created a complete fabrication. It was self-defense. He had a knife. Now you're telling me somebody's weighing in that he was waving a flag. It just absolute nonsense. And by the way, you said you're pro-Israel, as am I, Sheila, 100%. And I want people to know, and I think I speak for you, but I'm being consistent, even in Toronto at that disgraceful hate fest that erupted at Nathan Phillips Square. I am not against that. If you want to come out and, show your love to Hamas, hey, fine. I am pretty much a freedom of speech absolutist. It's just that, as we discussed the other day, Sheila, when you're an anti-lockdown protester and you are arrested and kicked off the squares, both Nathan Phillips Square and Yonge Dundas Square, why the double standard? Why pro-Hamas is okay? Pro-Tamil Tiger demonstrators back in February at Yonge Dundas Square, another place that it is anti-lockdown city for the for those demonstrators. And I think it's maybe that you can't, in Canada right now, the rules, because I asked the cops for, one after another, what are the rules? And they all said, can't comment.
Yeah.
So I think maybe my interpretation, Sheila, is that we're in a Canada right now where you can't go to the public square and protest the domestic government, be it the city, the country, the province. But if you're protesting the actions of foreign governments abroad, well, that's okay. But that's not okay. Free speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of the press, for that matter, because this is the same Nathan Phillips Square, of course, where we were threatened with trespass last summer by a bunch of thugs called Afro-Indigenous Rising because our presence there filming was triggering these snowflakes. No, sorry, if they're triggered into violence, that's their problem, and you as law enforcement, be it City Hall security or the Toronto Police Service, you take care of the people throwing punches, not running film. It is so disgraceful, the hypocrisy and the double standard, Sheila. I'm hopeful there's going to be a swing of the pendulum back to normalcy in the weeks and months ahead.
That brings me to a story that unfolded here in Alberta with an NDP MLA being careful what he wishes for because he just might get it, and he did. But just staying with Mocha for a second, I guess the moral of this story is I don't care who you are. I don't care what your cause is. I don't care if I wholeheartedly agree with you on literally everything. You touch one of our people, and we will scorch the earth under your feet and then salt the earth so that nothing ever grows there again.
Yep.
You're going to get what's coming to you, whatever it takes. You know, through all legal means, we will make sure that you don't touch our people. And, as you were talking there, I was thinking, I don't even know where Mocha stands on Israel and the Palestinian conflict. I don't even know. I've never asked him. I do know that Mocha cares deeply about freedom.
Yeah.
And and free speech and religious freedom, and he fights for Christian churches, and he's out there reporting on the lockdown in Montreal on Orthodox Jews. And as I was watching that, I thought, why would these pro-Israel kids come up and punch him? And I'm like, did they punch him because he looks Turkish? Because he's from Turkey? Did they just naturally assume that because he looks Turkish, that he would be supporting the Arab side of the conflict? And if that's the case, then that's racist.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. One of the reasons, Sheila, you and I love Israel so much is that it's this island of democracy and tolerance in a sea of seething hatred and intolerance. And part of tolerance means having demonstrations, having freedom of speech, having diverse opinions. And what those kids did was a disgrace. It was a disgrace to the nation of Israel, because they are going against the very concepts that make Israel such a wonderful country to support and to love. And I want to pick up something that you said earlier. You were talking about feminists. I am assuming, Sheila, this is when you went to that pro-feminist rally and that little worm, Dion Buse, a male feminist. And by the way, Sheila, I don't know if you noticed this. I think every man I have met that proudly declares he's a feminist is more of a misogynist than a feminist. I swear. They are hyped up anti-woman that somehow think that they can hide in plain sight by declaring themselves feminists and being pro-woman. And of course, he threw that punch in your face. And you said, I didn't know about this until you just said it, the feminists there who should have tackled that little worm and brought him to justice instead of creating cover for him, you said one of them, or some of them said, you asked for it, right? And this is uncanny, because when we go back to the dark old days of women complaining about sexual assault or rape, the argument in court that you don't see anymore, thank God, is, well, how high was her hemline? Was she showing cleavage? The idea that you asked for this uninvited assault just by the way you were dressed, which is absolute rubbish. And that was the feminist argument, and it's an argument I support. And yet you, with a camera reporting on a protest, your camera was the factor that made you asking for a beating, and they endorse this? What's happened to feminism, Sheila?
Yeah, with modern feminists, it's, my politics are the new, your dress was too short. That's what it is. They you see this all the time with people on the left, that people who are Black and conservative, they are somehow less Black. Because they have independent thoughts. And it's almost like the left, for a bunch of people who literally will not shut up about paternalism and, how we live in a paternalistic society. They're the most paternalistic people that you will ever find, because they excommunicate women like me from womankind because our politics are wrong, or minority people because their politics are wrong. They think that they have ownership over certain groups of people, and they don't even feel like they have to earn the vote of women or minorities. They're just entitled to it. And so for me, that's one of the big reasons why I'm not, there are plenty of reasons why I'm not on the left, but one of them is that there is this complete absence of independent thought cultivated on the left. It's groupthink. And it's one of the best things about being a conservative, but also one of the reasons we tend to lose all the time is because we do have independent thought. Like the left, Justin Trudeau can do no wrong. Yep. Even when he does wrong things, they can't call out the problems amongst their own, because it's just this homogenous idea all the time. And conservatives, the Conservative Party, they fracture all the time, because you have this group of independent thinkers that you're trying to keep together with these common values. But that's difficult when everybody is independent minded and has their own opinions. And again, that's one of the best things about being a conservative is that you can think your own way about anything. But it's also why they have less frequent electoral success these days.
Yeah, no, I agree, Sheila. I think the left it has very little to do with classical liberalism, and it's more about Marxism and tearing things down and destroying things.
Yep.
And the things that the left supported 50 or 60 years ago, like the state of Israel when it was formed in 1948, now they don't. And it is just one of the perverse ironies you see unfold. And Ezra did a great interview with Andrew Lawn about, something like, I forget the number, but dozens of people in Canadian newsrooms, CBC, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, Maclean's, signing an open letter saying that basically it came down to this. If you think there's two sides to this story, this conflict with Israel and Hamas, well, you're wrong. We're not going to report it that way. It was kind of like Israel is in the role of the Minnesota police officer that killed George Floyd, and Hamas is in the role of the victim, George Floyd. They are actually so emboldened. And these aren't necessarily just op-ed writers, Sheila. These are the people doing the 5W pyramid of a news story, that this is how we're covering it, and if you've got a problem with that, too bad. We've made the decision. Absolutely disgraceful, and again, more fuel to the fire when Sean Hannity said that great 2016 quote, "Journalism is dead."
We've seen this replicated on other issues like climate change.
Yes.
So we had a supporter, a friend of mine, actually. He was watching, I think it was The National. Is The National still on TV? I'm not sure. But anyways, he was watching The National, and they were talking about, I think it was the Sable Islands, maybe one of those islands in the North Atlantic. Anyways, the islands themselves are shrinking, and naturally it's from, erosion from the ocean, wind erosion, those things that actually move sand around, right? And they had these experts come on and say, well, obviously it's climate change.
Obviously.
It's like, well, obviously. How is obviously no debate about the other side, like not even presenting the other side that this is like the natural thing that small islands do. They erode, and then the sand builds up somewhere else. It's what they do. And so he wrote the ombudsman, and saying like this, not only is this not even close to fair and balanced, this isn't even what's happening. But even if we're not going to talk about what's happening, could we at least present the other side of the story, that not everything is climate change?
Yeah.
They said it is our official policy to when somebody says it's climate change, it's climate change. There's no argument. That's just the end of it. And that's what the ombudsman wrote him back. And in this instance, it was literally had nothing to do with climate change. But that's just how it was.
Yeah, so they are so brazen, Sheila. They are openly declaring their biases. And speaking of which, maybe that's a good segue to speak about.
Do you know what though? Hang on. I appreciate the honesty. That's the flip side of their little hey, we're signing this pro-Palestinian letter.
Yeah.
For once, we've dropped the pretense of being unbiased. At least, you know what? They put it in writing. We know who you are now. And I appreciate the honesty. It's just like how I tell everybody I'm a conservative. So that's the flip side. We've got a little transparency for once. You
know what? That's a great point, Sheila. And it's kind of like the point I made back around Christmas time when we saw MLAs in your province, MPPs in my province, buggering off to the sunny south, the Caribbean, Hawaii, Las Vegas, completely violating their own advice to the rank and file unwashed masses like us. And yet, there's terrible hypocrisy. It's one law for thee, one law for me. But wait a minute. This is actually good news. These are the government officials that have their greasy fingertips on all the latest data, not just the models, about COVID-19, and if they thought they were putting themselves and their families at danger by traveling outside of Canada and coming back, if they thought that the Wuhan virus was closer to Ebola than just a very bad flu season, well, they wouldn't have taken those trips. So I saw that as affirmation that this isn't such a big deal after all, is it?
No, I'm sort of smirking because it's a good segue into something I wanted to talk about. Yes, was it yesterday? Yeah, we were on air yesterday. We talked about Irfan Sabir, the NDP MLA. Yeah. Maybe Justin, I tweeted it. It's a story in 3 screen grabs. And so Irfan Sabir, we wrote it up on the website. You can find it at rebelnews.com if you just search Irfan Sabir. His pinned tweet on his Facebook page is, Jason Kenney, why didn't your government limit outdoor gatherings to 10 people, enforceable with a $1,000 fine for violating it? What's stopping you from enforcing it? Okay, so that's his pinned tweet. He really wants to drop the hammer on the Walk for Freedom that happens every single weekend in Calgary. Okay, then this is the story that we wrote up. He attends this convoy for Palestine, calling for an end to evictions. You mean squatters, anyways, and violence in Gaza. It's a step backwards, away from the peace process, blah, blah, blah. So he thinks it's okay for him to go to these mass organized protests where there's, I think Calgary police said 1,000 cars and people on the streets of downtown Calgary. Can you imagine what that did to traffic? Anyway, so anti-lockdown protests, bad. Pro-Palestine protests, good. And then here's the careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. More than 100 tickets are expected to be issued as a result of a weekend car rally that resulted in significant safety concerns. Read our full statement here. Now, in fairness, they aren't really getting lockdown tickets. Most of these are traffic violations, but you know what? Like I said, careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. So there's your equal enforcement, Irfan.
Yeah.
How do you like it?
What Irfan doesn't seem to realize, Sheila, is that we've been told ad nauseum that all these decisions are being driven by science in terms of large public gatherings, wearing masks, social distancing, et cetera, et cetera. The virus doesn't know if the gathering is some social justice cause or an anti-lockdown cause. When hundreds or thousands of people get together, it's simply that, hundreds and thousands of people getting together. It's irrelevant what the cause is. So if you really believed in the science angle, then you wouldn't approve any mass gathering, but clearly he can pick and choose based on his politics.
You know, that's interesting that you would suggest that, because then we have I think it's the Calgary chief of police. Justin, do we have that video clip where he weighs in and he says pretty much exactly that it actually does matter whether or not it's an anti-lockdown rodeo or a Black Lives Matter event. Speaking of the anti-lockdown rodeo, Alberta Health Services has done something scientists all over the world have not done yet, and that is they have found, so they say, I'd love to see the data on this, the proverbial needle in a haystack. They say there is one case of COVID-19 linked to the anti-lockdown rodeo.
Really?
And I don't know what that means, because did they come already sick or already carrying it, or did they attend it and then catch it days later? Because if there's just one, do you know what that says to me? That it doesn't spread outdoors, because there were thousands of people there, right? If one person has it and one person still has it,
yeah,
that also means it didn't spread at the event, which is exactly what I've been saying all along. Thank you, Alberta Health Services.
Oh, as a matter of fact, Sheila, last Friday morning, I wasn't able to sit in through the whole process, but it was Roman Baber's application about stopping, I guess, outdoor gatherings such as demonstrations and religious gatherings from being harassed by authorities. And one of the expert witnesses that was quoted by Mr. Baber's lawyer, Dr. Martha Fulford, She is of McMaster University. She is an expert in infectious diseases. In fact, she was quoted as being an expert among experts. And after going through, if you can imagine, more than 100,000 papers have been written about COVID-19 in the last year and a bit. And not a single one, according to this expert among experts of infectious diseases, links an outdoor gathering such as a protest or a demonstration or a religious gathering to a spread of the COVID-19. In other words, it is virtually zero. And the only reason she doesn't say 0.0 is you always have to set aside the statistical anomaly, which in this case, as the lawyer mentioned, you'd have a bunch of homeless people gathering, maybe getting high and drunk, maybe having sex. Well, yet then you have the conditions to have, the outbreak of a COVID-19 situation. But what's that? Sorry. But as you can see, Sheila, those conditions I just described in terms of a homeless encampment, that's not going to happen at a demonstration or an outdoor church service, right? So it's zero.
Yeah, and the CDC has admitted that. Like, it's not a conspiracy theory. The CDC is saying that. And I think that scenario that you just described is what they call in the movie The Other Guys a soup kitchen, I think is what they called it. Anyways, Justin, do you have that clip of the Calgary police chief? Please roll that.
The recipient of multiple complaints and who we've been trying to work with to no avail. And those are the individuals that have been arrested recently.
Sure. Apologies for talking over you there. We've seen a number of anti-mask protests in the streets of Calgary over the past 14 months, more recently demonstrations, as well as raising awareness about the Middle East conflict in between Israel and Palestine there. Are those gatherings treated differently? Are they treated the same? How do police go about keeping an eye on those?
Yeah, so it's very similar, but I think one of the key differences that it's important for Calgarians to understand is that protests aren't unlawful. So legitimate protests can go ahead. And we find that the majority of the organizers try to work with police and public health to do that in a way that actually minimizes the spread of COVID-19. What we're seeing on the other side of that is basically outdoor social gatherings that are really masked as protests. So we've seen in other parts of the province where we've seen rodeo/protest. I saw on social media this morning outdoor music festival that was being planned /protest. Those things are not protests or demonstrations. They're outdoor social gatherings, and they're subject to the public health restrictions for sure.
Have you ever heard anything so stupid? First he said
legitimate protest. Who determines, Chief, what a legitimate protest is? You and your politically correct ministerial masters that are pulling your strings, legitimate protest. What does that even mean? But by whose benchmark? And by the way, I couldn't help but notice the perverse irony, Sheila. There was that clip of the pro-Palestinian protesters walking over pavement that has been painted with the LGBTQ, et cetera, rainbow-colored flag. And it's kind of perversely ironic, as I say, because if you go to the Palestinian Authority and you come out as openly gay, what is your fate there, Sheila? This is something the left is all about, the LGBTQ file. And in fact, you even have groups called Queers Against Israeli Apartheid, if you can imagine. And yet, if you're gay in the Palestinian Authority, well, you're taking a one-way elevator trip up to a rooftop and you're going down by other means. Unbelievable.
Yeah, the best place to be gay and Palestinian is probably Tel Aviv.
Yep.
Now, I thought it was that police chief. I mean, who is he to determine what is a legitimate protest? I mean, first of all, we've got over 14 months of data of Saturday and Sunday protests in downtown Calgary where nobody's getting sick. They're there every single weekend. But if that's a legitimate protest, because that's not, like the chief says, a rodeo or a music festival, why are you ticketing people down there? Why do I have dozens of people from Calgary who've received a ticket?
Because, Sheila, he gave you the answer. That's an illegitimate protest that they're involved with.
And Pastor Art feeding the homeless? Apparently that's a social gathering.
And that's illegitimate.
Illegitimate.
Yeah.
Derek Reimer from Mission 7 Ministries getting tickets for feeding the homeless in Calgary. Apparently that's illegitimate. So I guess for the police chief, if it's anti-lockdown and you have a little fun doing it, tickets.
Yeah.
You know, don't play any music. Don't have any people show up and have fun and laugh. Be somber and angry. And even then, if you're anti-lockdown, it doesn't matter because the Calgary police are ticketing you. I've been there when they're issuing tickets.
You know, Sheila, we should do a poll. And, you know, we try to back the blue, although it's getting increasingly hard, folks. I mean, I think certain police services have done such damage to their reputations. It's going to take years to repair. But we should do a poll. What is the worst police service in Canada right now? I have 4 front runners based
Montreal.
on personal experience. Montreal is the odds-on favorite. Then we have to go, I think, with OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, that is, the Elmer Police. And with that statement, Calgary's got to be up there in that foursome too. These are just ridiculous police services in terms of how they're now interpreting what is right and wrong. I don't want these guys being the taskmasters in terms of determining what's legitimate and illegitimate, Sheila, when it comes to protests. When I see lines that say freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the word legitimate is not shoehorned into those sentences. That, chief, is a disgrace.
Yeah. Calgary City Police giving tickets constantly to the anti-lockdown protesters who are in front of Calgary City Hall, ticketing not just Pastor Art, but Pastor Art and another pastor who feed the homeless, then locking up Pastor Art and locking up Tim Stevens. So 2 of the 3 pastors in Alberta who've been locked up. It's come at the hands of the Calgary City Police Service. Yeah. And the fish rots from the head down, obviously.
It sure does. Sorry, go ahead, Sheila.
No, go ahead.
No, and speaking of pastors, we must get to another pastor under the guns of law enforcement and authorities. That would be Pastor Henry Hildebrandt at the Church of God in Elmer, Ontario. Last Friday, there was an order given where Pastor Hildebrandt and his congregation were literally locked out of their church. The locks were changed. But as the saying goes, the show, or in this case, the sermon, must go on. And in what turned out to be a beautiful spring day, which I think only enhanced the service. And Pastor Henry Hildebrandt, folks, man, even if you're a hardcore atheist, you would appreciate his sermons. Yeah. It's a blend of passion and humor. Very often he dovetails to humor, which I love. And we went there. Of course, there was a small congregation of haters across the street, including what seems to be the 2 members of the trans community. And the reason why I mentioned Elmer Police as a disgraceful police service, we showed this clip a few days ago, I think, Sheila. They tried to shut down our coverage of the counter-protest, even though we had already started filming. But these 2 thuggish, censorious thugs tried to say that journalism is an arrestable, that's what they said, arrestable offense if it's offending the group. I always thought, Sheila, that if you're doing a protest, the idea is to get the message out. In any event, we crossed the street and saw and met and spoke with so many lovely people. There's no other word for it. The weirdos and the hate mongers. And I do mean that because what I noticed compared to my last visit to the church, Sheila, someone had taken rocks and they had smashed the signage for the Church of God. There's their wonderful tolerant left again, eh? But I guess they can justify vandalism if the cause is correct for them. And after Pastor Hildebrandt's service, I got a chance to interview him. And without further ado, why don't we just throw to that now?
That's what struck me this week, and that's why I know those might be strong words, but that's why I'm saying, what else is it but medical dictatorship? Because we have these unelected officials, like you said, we have them making a decision, and our government, who was elected to stand by the Constitution, it's all pushed aside. Like I said this morning, our scripture verses engraved in stone at the Peace Tower at Parliament. We have 25 scriptures apparently there. Where has that gone? It's very, very, very troubling. And then, like I said, when the health officials tell us what their proof is, it is no proof. It is no proof because of what they're bringing forth. The data they're bringing forth is not the cure that they are offering is way worse than the virus is.
Why is it that an outdoor religious gathering in Elmer, Ontario is offside, but if these were Black Lives Matter demonstrators, the cops not only put their ticket books away, they bend a knee in solidarity?
Right, exactly. And none of us can help but to be reminded of that, what happened last year in the middle of the year when those gatherings were taking place. Why was that not an issue? Why was that not an issue? And why, if they said that these were super spreaders, if they were, why aren't they super spreaders? I mean, we see the people in Montreal on the streets, we see them somewhere else, and they have been in Toronto throughout the year, thousands of people. Of course, they don't report that, but I'm saying, why is there no super spreading? I have come to the conclusion, I say, okay, if you want to call this a super spreader event, it's spreading happiness. It's spreading happiness and normalcy.
Yeah, what is normal these days, indeed.
Right.
And another thing I want to touch upon, Pastor Hildebrand, you were justifiably so, in my opinion, condemning the mainstream media. And I think we have witnessed such egregious, unfair coverage of your situation. I want to read the lead paragraph from the London Free Press about what happened on Friday. And it says, residents in this quaint town of 7,000 are reacting with relief after authorities padlocked the doors of the Church of God over its ongoing defiance of COVID-19 restrictions. This suggests to me, Pastor, that the people of Elmer go to bed shaking like a leaf, thinking, oh my goodness, this Church of God, this super spreader event is going to bring death to us. Is this reality?
So I'm saying, if that was relief, what they saw, how must they feel today? Because here we are, and this is not the end of it. This is not the end of it. Actually, to be fair, and that is the biggest troublesome thing that we see today, is that the media does not cover it. It's not the truth, because in order for them to tell the truth, they would have to say there is some residents in Elmer that are against it, and there's many that are supporting it, or at least report the truth. Tell the truth, because this does not tell the truth.
No, you're right. Yeah, wasn't that just an amazing lead paragraph for a supposedly unbiased news story? It's almost suggesting that the journalists went out to all 7,000 residents and polled them, and all 7,000 said, yeah, we're terrified of what those Church of God maniacs are doing with their religious services. But I find that two interesting things, Sheila. One is that public health officials who are unelected, non-accountable, suddenly have all these powers to stomp on our freedoms. And I think when the dust settles and the smoke clears, there's got to be inquiries into how they have acted so that this never happens again. And the second thing is the mainstream media. Pro-freedom marches are, if they're covered, and mostly they're not, they're diminished when you have 100,000 people plus in Montreal. It's reported as several. And the idea that journalists are, they're not about objectivity. There doesn't seem to be anybody on the side of freedom, which is rich because we depend on freedom of the press. Yeah. But instead, they become so many COVID Karens running the law for enforcement and like screaming like Donald Sutherland in The Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Look, there. What is your take on how the media and the public health officials have devolved over the last several months, Sheila?
As you were talking, something struck me there, and I've seen parallels to Alberta back during the Bill 6 rebellion against Rachel Notley. And then early in the pandemic, when certain Hutterite colonies did have COVID-19 outbreaks. And there was, it was like this underlying theme constantly in the mainstream media to divide us from our Hutterite friends and neighbors, to this us versus them, that they were super spreaders of COVID-19 and you needed to stay away from them, and they needed to stay locked up on their colonies. And back during Bill 6, the government tried to do a carve-out for those farms instead of our farms, and the Hutterites resisted it. They said, we're not any different. We live our lives a different way, but we're still doing the same thing, and we're Albertans like everybody else, and we don't want special treatment. And so I see a strong similarity to what's happening with the Church of God. And I say this as someone with a little bit of experience, because every summer of my life as a kid, I spent a lot of time in and around Mount Forest, where there's a lot of old order Mennonite and Amish people there. And they were just part of the community. They weren't weird. You know, there were hitching posts behind the grocery store for their buggies, but it wasn't weird. And you can see sort of that happening again with the reporting here, is that the reporters really want the Church of God to be treated like the weirdos in Aylmer, like something other than the normals in Aylmer. And they're just a regular part of the community with a different religious practice, and just leave them alone. Yeah. But they are doing this like us versus them. All the normal, nice people in the community are so happy that these weirdos churches are closed. And that's how they're being spoken of. And I resent that. I resent the mainstream media dividing the Church of God from the rest of the community. They are part of the community. They do things differently, but they're also part of the community, just like everybody else. And it would seem to me, Sheila, when it comes to picking sides, it is the government side they will pick, because the government is now the sugar daddy for the mainstream media. Yep. Just about everyone is getting some kind of subsidy or bailout. Otherwise, they wouldn't function anymore. And, as our wonderful boss Ezra likes to say, the watchdogs have become the lapdogs. Now, I know Justin has mentioned several times in my ear that we need to get to some of these chats. Go ahead. And there's a few of them, and I just better put my glasses on. It's a little bit far away. Okay. Let's have a go here. Super You from ZenAX. Oh, geez, David's introduction for Sheila is just too much. I look forward to it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's like the shot in the arm that I really need. We've got 5 libraries in the form of a hyper chat from Surfing Ninja. Says, cheers, Sheila. Sorry, David, I cut you off. You were going to say something there. Oh, now the pressure's really on to enhance these introductions, and I'm running out of superlatives, Sheila. So maybe you should write your own introduction and just email it to me. I'm not against props. If you need props, bring in props. Just don't end up in costume country. Nope, trans cat is still under the ban, folks. We cannot mention trans cat. We've got a hyper chat of 5 libraries from Token. Sheila, to understand Bitcoin, I suggest you read the Bitcoin Standard. Okay. It will reveal everything about why Bitcoin is money. Perfect. That's what I need. I cannot get my head around this, like the current thinking about money. And I know I need to, because I think it's the way of the future. And I want to be ready for the future when it comes. But I just don't understand it. So I appreciate that. I will read that. Thank you very much. I think the way of the future is the hovercraft, Sheila. Do you know what's funny? I think I have a pamphlet around here from the 50s from Bombardier. Oh, yes. On their hovercraft, like the promotional merchandise for the original hovercraft. Yeah. How much taxpayer pork went into that little project? Oh, Lord. For it to never get off the ground. They promised me hovercrafts and flying cars, and all we got was government debt and lots of subsidies to Bombardier. We've got a hyper chat of 1 library from Pink Phoenix. I bet you that's Catherine from Pink Phoenix Nails. Hey friends, good morning. I finally figured out this crypto crap. This library thing is making my boomer show. Catherine, I feel like I'm on a white knuckle ride. Like, you know, when you're running out of gasoline in the car, it's on orange and the closest gas station is like 20 kilometers away. That's how I feel currently about my nails, because the nail salons are closed because Jason Kenney closed them. And I'm going quadding this weekend, and I don't think my nails are not going to live. They're not going to live. So, Catherine, I might have to come see you for an illegal nail job, please. We've got a hyper chat of one library, History World Club. Follow History World Club on Instagram, your hub for educational content. Question to the lovely hosts. What is your favorite TV show, news, and entertainment separately? And do you think Rebel would ever produce entertainment TV shows? I think we're an entertainment TV show, by the way.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, honest to gosh, Sheila, I don't know about you. I am so time pressed these days. I have virtually no time to see what's happening in the pop culture universe. But the one guilty pleasure I have right now, and I think this series premiered in 2016, so I'm playing catch up, and I'm in the third season right now, is The Man in the High Castle, based on the Philip K. Dick story. And it's about an alternative universe in which the Nazis in Imperial Japan actually won the Second World War, and the United States is under Nazi occupation and Japanese occupation in the West. And I don't want to give any more away of it, but it draws you in every episode. The momentum starts. There's a lot of pathos in it too, which is what I like. Yeah. And I highly recommend it. And I kind of keep feeling, Sheila, that we're living our Man in the High Castle moment. There's a guy called Biden in the White House. How did this happen, right? Maybe there's an alternative Earth where Trump actually did get reelected. So, it's got that. I think it's more relevant, this series, in 2021 when it debuted 5 years ago. Sheila, any show that you're binge watching these days?
I was thinking about that the other day. Like, what we're living through is like Red Dawn, but softer, where they didn't have to do like the big, we're invading. They're just like creeping in. We give them money. They take us over. They influence our politicians. It's less overt. That's what I was thinking. At the beginning of the pandemic, I rewatched the entire Twin Peaks series, including the new episodes and the movie, and I forgot how much I liked that show and how cheesy it was. I just recently started rewatching The X-Files from beginning to end, so I watched that one on the treadmill. I think you guys are probably catching a theme in the stuff that I like to watch. And I think if you wanted a news show, obviously Tucker Carlson. Yes. And it's so funny to watch Tucker Carlson because everything that he talks about is the mainstream media loses their mind. They try to debunk him. They try to fact check him. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, maybe it did come from the Wuhan lab. But they just pretend like Tucker didn't say it a year ago. You know what I mean? Like now they're like, oh, we've uncovered evidence that it could be coming from the Wuhan lab. And it's like, I remember when you jerks called Tucker fake news when he was talking about that a year ago.
Tucker is an absolute gem. And speaking of Fox News, Sheila, something I always try to make some time for is Sundays at 8 p.m., Life, Liberty, and Levin. And what I love about that show, folks, it's old school. It's not rhetoric and people shouting and panels disagreeing, and it's a vortex of chaos. It's Mark Levin, one of the greatest minds, I think, that is alive today, sitting down across from whoever he's interviewing, be it President Trump or anyone else. Of course, top-rating Democrats would never be caught dead on that show because Levin would put them through the paper shredder intellectually wise. And it is just an hour of calm, civilized, intellectual discussion, and it's a fantastic show. So I would recommend that for my top news show.
Yeah, I agree too. He's got these big thinkers, these like big brain, big concept thinkers on all the time. And I think those people can only be interviewed in that sit down long format. We should keep going because we're already 4 minutes past the hour. We've got a Super U chat. What do we call them on Super U again, Justin?
Hyper?
Nope.
Nope.
Super shouts. Is it a shout?
Shout.
Yeah, Super U shout. I kind of like that. Trini Canadian says, how do we know the Calgary police actually issued those tickets or just tweeted it? You know what's going to happen? Everybody who gets a ticket is probably going to turn around and say, the Calgary police are racist for issuing these tickets and we must defund them. And so we'll know exactly who got a ticket because they'll be the ones whining the loudest after crying and crying and crying for lockdown people to be ticketed for months and months and months.
Good point.
Hyper chat of One Library from Binga. Common sense has gone away. Loyalty to the tribe has replaced it. That is also true. Conservatives too. Yes, we see this all the time with the people who are just like hanging on to Andrew Scheer and Jason Kenney and refusing to reject any criticism of them. Even though if Rachel Notley had done the things that Jason Kenney is doing, they would be losing their minds.
100%.
Look at Aaron O'Toole. Thank you. I should have kept reading your hyper chat because you also say, look at Aaron O'Toole and Jason Kenney kicking out anyone who disagrees with him out of the party. The leader banishing them from the tribe. Yeah. And it's funny because there's those two MLAs in Calgary, UCP MLAs, who are like pro-Hamas. And they get to stay in the party, even though it is like the mainstream conservative consensus that, at least at the party level, that you're pro-Israel. I think Jason Kenney is probably one of the most pro-Israel politicians in Canada currently, or ever. I think maybe only dwarfed by Stephen Harper, who spoke at the Knesset. And so for those two to stay, and that's fine, that's free speech. But for the two MLAs who spoke up for Albertans to get the boot, I think that says a lot about the state of affairs in the UCP right now.
And by the way, Sheila, do you think Premier Kenney is as pro-Israel as he used to be? Because he seems to have done a backflip on everything else he once was pro on, and he seems to want a new base. So maybe that's a good question to ask him if you ever get a chance to scrum him.
Yeah, if I ever get a chance to scrum him. They don't take our questions when we call in. Rights are like muscles, exercise them or lose them. That's from Roxanne with a hyper chat. A hyper chat from History World Club. Worst police services are OPP, RCMP, Toronto, Aylmer, Montreal, Vancouver, Calgary. I'll throw some Manitoba cops in there. The ones that were blocking Pastor Tobias's church. And I forget what police service that was. Steinbach police, I think it was. Yeah, they're terrible. Generally, I like the RCMP. However, I think it's Staff Sergeant Bruce in Bashaw, Alberta. He does not have a lot of fans these days, given how heavy-handed he's been with all the restaurants around there and with Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop.
And I can say this, of all those police services listed, by far, Montreal Police Service is the worst from what I can tell. The absolute worst. I mean, it's like they're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and all these other police services are high school football teams. Okay, so that's from what I've experienced. I've never seen anything like that. I've seen police services all over the world, Sheila. I've never seen the kind of police culture that exists in Montreal, and I feel sorry for their citizens.
Yeah, you know, there's like some police services with some bad cops with authoritarian tendencies. I think that's the RCMP. And then there's like the ones that are generally really bad during the pandemic. I would throw Calgary in there, Toronto for sure, OPP. But the Montreal cops are next level stormtrooper bad. Like they're just awful.
And you know, Sheila, I would say this too. When we saw Mocha's footage over the weekend in Montreal with the Montreal riot police charging in. I love that little thing they do where they're banging their batons on their shields. It kind of sounds like the tap dancers that are part of the Michael Flatley's Lord of the Dance troupe. But I think, Sheila, they live for this. They love this. The idea, too, as they say in the police ranks, whack them and stack them. This is what they signed up for. It's not, geez, I have some trepidation going into the office. No. They are gung-ho. They love doing what they're doing when they shouldn't be. This should be, if anything, a necessary evil.
Oh, yeah. Like, viewers at home, I advise you to watch Mocha's full video because there are people walking in the street and they're walking away. They're clearing the streets. Yeah. And you've got these riot cops standing behind them. And the guys are walking. They're walking pretty fast. And the riot cops with their shield and their batons are shoving these people in the back for no reason. They didn't slow down. They aren't lingering. They're walking fast. So if you're walking fast and someone shoves you in the back, what's that supposed to do except maybe make you trip, maybe make you fall on your face on the concrete? That's what that's all about. I mean, it was completely unnecessary. That cop skipped into work knowing that he was going to break up a riot and shove some people in the back. For sure.
100%, Sheila. That's how I really feel.
Yep. We've got Hyper Chat of One Library from History Club World. The lovely angel for the province of Alberta, Guns of Steel. Sheila Gunn Reid, I don't know. And David the Menzoid, the man with a mission. Well, thank you very much. That's pretty kind.
Thank you.
We've got another Hyper Chat from History Club World. You're entertaining, but I mean none news. Thoughts on CNN getting new ownership? I don't think it's salvageable. I mean, I guess if you can get it for a deal because nobody's watching it. I mean, it's the airport doctor's office channel, isn't it? But I mean, what would tangibly change at CNN ever?
I bet they probably already missed Trump. It was much easier for them to, convey their narrative, their anti-Trumpism when Donald Trump was actually in the White House. Now it's like, what do we do?
Yeah. And they just I don't know, pretend like Biden's not losing his mind and just like gloss over that. How do we polish this up so that people realize that he's not an old, frail man in cognitive decline?
Who drives electric trucks.
With somebody with the driver training car. We've got a hyper chat from History Club World. Has Rebel ever thought about producing a show for the Fox News channel? Nope. They do something completely different. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Fox News and a lot of the contributors there. I know Ezra's been on Tucker, which is like, I still watch that with such excitement. I was screaming in my house when Ezra was on Tucker. I was literally screaming. I was screaming. I was freaking out. And I knew that it was going to happen all day. And I thought I would be emotionally prepared. But when it happened, I was screaming.
It's fantastic.
But, we do something a little different here at Rebel News. I'm not saying that we're like low quality, but we got a fast turnaround time. We don't spend money on expensive studios or satellite feeds. We don't do any of that. We are crowdfunded and, we try to keep it close to the grassroots and the people, I think.
Yeah.
And I think we are officially all caught up. Justin, is that right? Yep. Oh, I'm so happy. We are all caught up. My hodgepodge webcam didn't start on fire. And everything's fine. This is great. We did it, David.
Well, thank you yet again, Sheila Gunn Reid. Once again, tons of topics we never got to, but that's par for the course. So thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Justin, behind the board there. Hey, thank you for all you people sitting in libraries. I still can't get my head around that, but I know it somehow translates into money for the bottom line, and we always depend on your support. We do not get taxpayer subsidies from the Justin Trudeau Liberals, nor would we accept it if ever offered, as if that would ever happen. And so on behalf of myself, David Menzies, we will see you, that's Sheila and I, next Tuesday. Ezra's back in this chair tomorrow. In the meantime, stay sane.